So you get this incredible conclusion, and the people actually turning their heart back again to God. Even though it didn't work for the king, it at least worked for the people. So verse 41, you get another miracle. Elijah said unto Ahab, get thee up, eat and drink, for there is a sound of abundance of rain. So Ahab went up to eat and to drink. And Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, and he cast himself down on the earth and put his face between his knees. And so he asks his servant to go and look toward the sea, out there towards the west. And he says, do you see anything? Nope, I don't see anything. Go again. He went, do you see anything? No, I don't see anything. The servant went 7 times. You're going to see that pattern with Naaman. You're going to see that pattern in other places where God has people repeat things multiple times. There's this leap of faith. And finally, after the 7th time, he said, behold, there ariseth a little cloud out of the sea like a man's hand. And he said, go up, say unto Ahab, prepare thy chariot and get thee down, that the rain stop thee not. Now that's a leap of faith. It hasn't been raining all this time. And he sees a little cloud the size of a man's hand way out there over the sea. And he says, go tell the king, get down off the mountain now so that he doesn't get stuck in the rain. Elijah's life is filled with example after example after example of moving forward in absolute faith in the face of incredible adversity and what would be worldly reasons for why you shouldn't trust this. Elijah's a beautiful example of just trusting what he hears from the Lord. And so it came to pass, in the meanwhile, verse 45, the heaven was black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain. And the story then concludes in 46, and the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. This valley, this fertile, beautiful valley up there in northern Israel.
So I love these stories of Elijah. What I think is interesting is that he's still human. I so honor his trust and his willingness to stand in the face of such challenges, and yet he still seems to struggle at times with his humanity, his fallen nature, that he goes on this long journey. In fact, if we go back to look at verse 4, at the bottom of verse 4, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my father. So we don't know the whole story of why Elijah's feeling discouraged, but it seems like people have not fully turned to the Lord, even after these incredible things. Has there ever been a time in your life where things went well, and yet there were still naysayers who didn't get on board and say, man, I now trust God, and I'm willing to stop creating problems for other people? And I think if I'm interpreting Elijah's life, I think he's a little discouraged that after all this work that he's done, and really God's done it, that people are still choosing to disbelieve, to be disconnected covenantally from God, that Elijah goes on this physical and symbolic journey back to Horeb, another name for Mount Sinai, which is the origin story for the Israelites in terms of their covenantal connection to God, that Elijah wants to be like Moses. I want to get back to that mountain and re-engage with God in this symbolic location.
So if you think this through for a minute, what a lonely, difficult job it is for prophets at times when, like Taylor said, he's performed 6 amazing miracles, some of them very visible in front of everybody, and yet the people aren't coming to him saying, okay, let's make this right. So Taylor read you the last line of verse 4. Look at the first part of verse 4. He himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. So he left the people. It's as if he couldn't take it anymore. He goes out into the wilderness, and he came and he sat down under a juniper tree, and he requested for himself that he might die. The man who has sealing keys didn't have power over his own life. There's only one person who's ever had that ability, and that's Jesus, who freely gave up the ghost at the right time. But he requested he might die, and then he laid down and he slept under that juniper tree. Look at the second half of verse 5. Behold, then an angel touched him and said unto him, Arise and eat. Don't you love the fact that even when this great prophet who has devoted his whole life to the Lord, he's discouraged, he's down, he wants to be done. He wants to move on to the next life. His mission isn't complete. The time is not right. So an angel comes, touches him, and brings him food. Now, most of you listening to this or reading this verse think to yourself of a heavenly being coming down, this angel of light, touching him and giving him food and drink. And that's probably the way it happened. But I'm thinking more in terms of you in your life here, of how often angels come by your house and bring you food and drink when you're feeling down or discouraged or sick or afflicted in any manner. And maybe it's not about receiving the food. Maybe in this lesson, it's about being that angel and delivering that life-giving substance to people, that maybe they need to be reminded that life is worth living and there's hope and there's help and the heavens are aware of them. What an amazing thing if you ever get those promptings to take something. It doesn't need to be food. It could be anything, or send something to somebody. If we hear him, follow through on those little promptings that come, and we think to ourselves, that's silly. They don't need that. I mean, Elijah, he's one of the greatest prophets of all time. He would never need any help, right? I think even God's servants occasionally could use that help from people around them to recognize, hey, you're doing a good work. Keep it up. It's appreciated. And I love that part of the story. And then once he's got this energy back, then as Taylor said, he ends up going down to the same place where Moses started, down there at Mount Horeb, or Mount Sinai.
Very long journey. It's a tough journey. There's not a lot of vegetation, not a lot of water. I mean, he was already living through a famine. Like, if you want a natural famine, go down to Mount Sinai area.
Permanent.
Like, you don't even need to seal the heavens. They're just like, it's dry. And yet, it's in that wilderness, the wilds, where he wants to fully encounter God, where he wants to put it. Elijah seems to be putting himself under total need for God in his life in all ways.
Love that. Oh, and by the way, do you find it interesting that of the people who appear on the Mount of Transfiguration and in the Kirtland Temple, two of them are Elijah and Moses. There's something beautiful connecting about these two prophets in the Old Testament and the keys that they provide for us in these, the latter days.